Let me introduce the next two speakers, starting with one. To present the paper Bullying in Schools in the United Arab Emirates, Reported Prevalence and the Effects of an Intervention Employing Classroom Activities. Let me first introduce Kenneth Rigby. Oh, Rym is going to start. Okay, let me then introduce Rym Al Falasy. Welcome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Celia. A few days ago, I met with a friend of mine. As we chatted, I asked her about her son, her 8-year-old son, Mohammed, who went to a school well known for a swimming program. And I wanted to know how it went for him. To my surprise, Mohammed no longer swims. He was bullied a few times. His school uniform was dropped in the pool. He was called names. And just like that, Mohammed doesn't swim anymore. Like anywhere in the world, bullying is a reality in the United Arab Emirates. In 2016, we piloted a program with 20 schools, and my first thought was, God help us. We're dealing with change of behavior. And as you know, change is difficult. I was wondering, what if the program was too hard to implement? What if the children didn't engage? And what if the school didn't embrace the change? And what if it simply didn't work? I mean, we're talking about having to get the buy-in of school principals, teachers, social workers, parents, and let's not forget children, who are very opinionated these days. And if they don't like something, they make sure to tell you. However, our feedback was amazing, and I hope to share that with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here with you. You might or might not know this, but the United Arab Emirates government has an absolute interest in protecting the rights of the children. Although we are a young country, we understand that taking care of our children, especially at an early age, is extremely important. If we want future leaders, we have to ensure that our children are raised and nourished in a healthy and safe environment. 3 years ago, the Supreme Council for Motherhood and Childhood, along with the UNICEF, analyzed the situation in our schools. We wanted to find out if children were receiving their education in a healthy and safe environment, and if they were happy too. We found out that bullying behavior was evident, especially among students of grade 6 to 9. That's the ages between 11 and 15. This was a reality that we couldn't ignore. We couldn't just hope for it to go away. We had to do something. But for the program to work, we had to do it properly. We needed a plan. We needed a strategy, and we needed to ensure effective execution. We started a study and interviewed the principals, the teachers, and the children themselves. We enrolled the participation of health and safety officers, nurses, management, and admin staff. We literally got everyone on board. We were clear, in order to make this journey work, everyone had to get on the bus. We decided to look at successful models of anti-bullying programs. We sought advice from overseas. We looked at the likes of the Kiva program from Finland and the Always program in the United States. We also involved the anti-bullying and leading expert himself, Professor Kenneth Rigby. We needed to understand our situation, and we needed to ensure that we do our homework and research. For example, worldwide, cyberbullying is a huge concern. We in the United Arab Emirates take it seriously. However, when we did our research, it still came third. The first was verbal bullying. In total, we reviewed 44 programs, and we picked 13 interventions. We had to tailor our program so that it was effective to the United Arab Emirates. The program was the first of its kind in the Middle East. Our program strength was based on 3 key aspects. The first was the active involvement of children. We interviewed them one-on-one in group settings and asked them questions, and we really listened to them. The children were our priority. We had to get their buy-in and engagement. Otherwise, the whole thing would have been a waste of time. The second was the changing of attitudes in school staff. Along with the UNICEF team, Our team conducted trainings for the principals, management team, nurses, social workers, and teachers. We also shared and guide them through the model and have them report back to us. We also developed manuals as a reference for teachers to go back to. And thirdly, we worked on raising parents' awareness by also creating guidelines that helped define bullying. And secondly, understand the different kinds of bullying and what to look out for in their children, and steps they could take whether their child was being bullied or in fact was the bully. In doing so, this all led to improving the over-social school environment to ensure we could have a program that was effective and had the buy-in of everyone involved. The program was piloted in 2016 across 20 schools, reaching 130 school staff members and over 1,700 students. To date, we have reached 64 schools. That's a threefold increase since the day we started. And this is just the beginning. We want to do more and we can do more. We have a vision, moving forward. We want to tackle mental health issues through better educating society at large about the effects of bullying on personality, confidence, and the development of our children and their future. We want to increase the engagement of parents to help us promote a safe and healthy and enabling school environment. We want to encourage to develop their own We want schools to develop their own anti-bullying policies specific to their needs and help them explore even more options in their own creative ways. We want to work with educational authorities to have a section on bullying in their protection policies to help us prevent and measure progress of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, before I ask Professor Ken Rigby to come on stage, I'd like to say we have done well, but we must continue. I'm excited that we started so little, but are growing fast. So far, the engagement of our children has been amazing. Our vision is to implement the program across all schools in the United Arab Emirates. There should be no child like Mohammed who no longer likes to swim because he has been bullied. We can do so much more, which is why we are here today, to learn from one another to better aid us in our goals against bullying. I hope that we all agree that this is just beginning. Please welcome to the stage Professor Ken Rigby. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank the people who've been helping in this particular study, to Rym, who's just been talking to you, and also to Mr. Issam Ali, with whom I've had the great pleasure of working for the last 2 or 3 years in helping to develop this particular project. I think Rym said it's just the beginning, and you know what is being done is really in contrast to what has been done in places like Norway and in Finland and in Sweden. There's a little experience, direct experience of the kind that is obviously present in those countries. So it's just the beginning. Now let me explain. This presentation, by the way, is going to be very factual, I hope down to earth, and not theoretical, not because I dislike theory, but because I have opted to simply tell you what has been found with respect to bullying from the work that has been done so far, and we've got a long way to go. Now the aims of the presentation are 3. The first is to examine the nature and extent of bullying among children in the Emirates, and that hasn't been done before. The second is to report on the results of a preliminary study in the Emirates designed to reduce school bullying through the use of classroom instruction and various activities, which I'll describe to you shortly. Thirdly, I want to talk about the relevance of gender and grade level, as it applies to the bullying that goes on in the Emirates. First of all, let me tell you about the sample that we obtained, the first sample, consisting of 1,079 students in 20 schools, years 6 to 9, or grades 6 to 9. In the Emirates, by the way, most schools, or all government schools, are single-sex schools. And we had 10 that were boys' schools and 7 that were girls' schools. But there are mixed schools. These are private schools, and they were actually involved in the sampling as well. Excuse me. Now, that shows you the distribution across the years as far as boys and girls are concerned. And you'll see that in year 6 we had very similar numbers of boys and girls, same for year 7, same for year 8. Year 9 is a bit of a difference because you can see you've got rather more girls involved in the sample. So the idea was, of course, to gather very basic data about the extent of bullying and the kind of bullying that was going on. You can see there are various items included in the questionnaires, which were answered at school. There are 5 items that were intended to assess being victimized, being bullied, 4 to bullying others, perpetrating bullying, a single item simply asking how safe or unsafe students actually felt at school, and a set of 4 items that looked at the brighter, better side, if you like, the prosocial behaviour. The items were actually taken from rather an old scale that was developed by myself and Philip Slee way back in 1993. It was translated into Arabic, of course, and answered through the Arabic-speaking students. And I think it's important here to realise that under those conditions, you can't really compare the level of bullying that I'm going to talk about, compare the Emirates bullying with others. And as I've noted, different response categories were actually employed as well. Let's look at them. These are the victimisation items. I get called names by others, others make fun of me, I get picked on by others. These are verbal forms of bullying, the most common, of course. The next one is a physical one. I get hit and pushed around by others. And then the 5th one there is I receive unpleasant messages from other students for cyberbullying. Of course, way back in 1993, we had never heard of cyberbullying. It's really, a new phenomenon in the succeeding years. So we had one item then on cyberbullying. And the response category is never once in a while, a few times a month. So I'm looking in a few moments at a few times a month and a few times a week. See what it comes out. Look at being picked on. So we've got moderately often, scrambled a little, and very often indicated there for boys and girls. And it's come out rather funnily, but there it is. It's clear enough that boys say they're being picked on more than girls. This is true of being called names as well. And lastly, being made fun of at school. And get this gender difference. Incidentally, you don't get this gender difference in a recent study I did in Australia, or you get a difference, but it's in the other direction, with the girls indicating that they're receiving more verbal bullying than the boys, principally, of course, from other girls. The physical bullying, being hit or pushed, well, of course, boys are more involved in physical, and this is true, I think, in every culture that has ever been examined. Cyberbullying is less, by the way, and in fact most teachers who have been questionnared in Australia at least believe that cyberbullying is far more common than indeed any other form of bullying. And you can see in fact that it's less common here and I think in most countries, if not all countries, than in other forms, certainly in this case being hit or pushed around. Now, as far as bullying others, I'm part of a group that goes around teaching others. We tend to forget that a good deal of bullying is kind of coordinated by a group. I enjoy upsetting with people. I like to make others scared of me, it's going to frighten them. I like that item. I like to get into a fight with someone I could easily beat, which is almost the essence of bullying, isn't it? And see what happened here. Well, there are rather a lot of students, where we're going up to 18% or so altogether, who's moderately often, or very often, of boys. Boys more likely to engage in this scaring, but a lot of girls do too, go around trying to scare people. Teasing in a group. Okay. Finding someone they can easily beat. Upsetting weak people. Okay, so there we are. The boys, not surprisingly, report bullying others a good deal more than girls do. Safety at school. A question is a very simple question about how safe do you feel at school with those alternatives. I usually feel safe at half the time. I usually don't feel safe. I never feel safe. And if you look at the data, you'll see it's a little surprising. We've got, if you look at the boys first of all, perhaps, in the yellow there, 10.3% is saying that they never feel safe. That seems to be an awful lot of children who are feeling that they're not safe. And this is in the context of bullying, of course, the various reasons for not feeling safe. But it's rather a lot, isn't it? With boys feeling more unsafe than girls. So we're looking at, 16% or so, 15% perhaps, of children feeling quite often, feeling usually unsafe or never safe. And the prosocial items, these were I like to make friends. It was good to put in something rather pleasant rather than the entire negative. I enjoy helping others. I share things with others. I like to help people being harassed. And here I'm simply looking at a few times a week. A few times a week. See what they say. Well, yes, the students claim to be pretty altruistic, don't they? Helping harassed and so on. And no difference between boys and girls. I think most people might have thought that girls were rather more into the business of being kind and helpful to people, but it didn't turn out that way. Now, seeing these items as part of a scale, I think, was of some importance for future work. The 5-item victimization scale with a reasonably good alpha of 0.78. The bullying scale 0.67, that's not too bad, I suppose, for 4-item scale, and for the prosocial scale about the same. So it was possible then to use these items, it seemed, to constitute a scale of reasonable reliability. So one could look at the victimization level using the scale for boys and girls from year 6 to 9, and you see it's very similar with a gap between boys and girls, very similar gap at each year, and it's coming down. And of course this has been well known. In fact, I remember first coming across it with Dan Alves indicating that there was this reduction, and since then, over time, with less victimization as children got older. And I think that's fairly general. As far as bullying others is concerned, big gap again between the boys and girls for each year, coming down as children get older. Prosocial behaviour is quite interesting in a way that it should be going down as children get older. And I think possibly the reason for this is that it's the younger children who want to come over as good boys and good girls. You remember the Kohlberg thing of moral development, where they, when you're young, you want to come over as a good boy or a good girl. As you get older, you become more realistic. So it doesn't mean to say, I think, there's a deterioration in behaviour so much as a reinterpretation, really, of what one is actually doing. Now, the correlations, I think, are of some interest here between the various scales. Now, those who reported bullying more did report that they were being victimized themselves. And I think many people have indicated, haven't they, that there are a lot of children who bully and are bullied, the bully victim children, and they are the most miserable children, and the children who need to be hurt. The next one I think is particularly interesting. And sorry about the way it's got scrambled. a lot of children who bully feel safer, right? And you think that's a motive that's actually been perhaps understated. And in some schools, it seems to pay. You know, if you're getting one of the bully boys, then it's a good deal safer. It'd be interesting to look at different schools and see whether this is not the case. That's a fairly basic motivation. Acting prosocially, well, no, a little bit less social, but the correlation isn't very big. Those who are reported being bullied feel less safe, of course. There's a correlation there of minus 0.26. And they also report being slightly less prosocial. Okay. This is based upon a fairly big sample of about 1,500, so fairly stable kind of correlations. So the summary so far, how am I going? Oh gosh. Fast. Oh dear, the news was that. Anyway, I don't think I'll bother about that because I think you've actually, I tell you very close to the end, you know what the summary would make, it would consist of. Yeah, okay. Part two, which I wish I had more time to talk to you about, this is about schools that took part in the intervention. What they did was to receive lessons, some on bullying and some on social skills. I produced a manual which had to do with helping people, children, to understand bullying better, to make rules, to help to make rules. Old idea from, again, Dan Albius in class. And so on. On the social skills side, I didn't produce this, but the schools chose whatever they wanted to, and some chose a lot, and some not many. And even though that makes it very difficult to analyse the data, it means that the teachers really were owning and choosing what they wanted. And I think that's terribly important, really. Now, the sample, the intervention and the control groups were not all that similar. You can see it looked very nice as far as boys and girls are concerned, in that years 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the intervention were fairly equally represented. But that's not true of the control, the 4 control schools, which led to some difficulties in trying to draw conclusions. And the way in which we tried to solve this was by using a multiple correlation and putting into the multiple correlation grade and gender, which we knew impacted upon outcomes. So using that, it was possible to see there are much stronger and better analyses that can be done if we had a larger sample, and we do, I think, require rather better control groups or similar control groups in order to feel very confident and about some of the findings. Similar significance was found with respect to being victimized. The intervention group did better. As far as bullying others concerned, I'm going backwards, am I? What's happening? Feeling safe, the children in the intervention did feel a bit safer, and this was significant through the regression analysis. Acting prosocially, the intervention group were acting more prosocially as a consequence, after controlling, as I say, for gender and for grade. So the conclusions are that it does appear from this analysis that indeed there was less reporting of being victimized, less reporting engaging in bullying, less reporting feeling unsafe at school, more reporting of engaging in prosocial behaviour. So that was really quite encouraging for us to do further work. But this is very much a preliminary study, I think. Comment on gender differences. I could talk at length of this, but obviously can't, because, but you know, the boys and girls were very different. The boys were very tough-minded. Oh, people who get victimized deserve it in a way, to bring it on themselves. This is not true of all boys, but there was a significant difference here with the boys saying, what you do is you fight physically fight somebody bullies you, and so on. Whereas the girls are far more, I think, mature and psychologically minded, believing that there are covert forms of bullying which are very important, like exclusion, and that bullying can lead to depression. The boys were not so likely to say that it can really harm you. So that it's the boys, if you like, who need more education, I think, than the girls. The general conclusions, before I wrap up, yes, there's evidence that of the prevalence. We know more about the kind of bullying that goes on. We know we've got a reliable scale in Arabic. We know that there are gender differences. We know that it appears that educational methods can be used in the Emirates for reducing bullying. And now we're looking at another aspect of it, which I think is particularly important, and that is, of course, looking at interventions. And the next stage is to actually look at the teachers being instructed in various methods of intervention. This is my book, by the way, if you're interested in it, and I think you can pick up some information about it on the way out. There's 6 different methods of intervention there, and teachers are being instructed on how these methods would work, and asked to think about when they would actually use them with actual cases of bullying. So that's a future stage of the book, future stage of the research. I'm sorry to be so rushing, but I couldn't, I knew it was going to be difficult. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Kenneth? Yes?
Thank you for that talk, Ken. You might have said this, but did you give the children a definition of bullying before you asked the questions about how often they've been picked on? And
that's a good question. I'm not quite sure, to what extent, but it was certainly the question was given in the context of actual bullying, whether in fact the teachers went through a definition or not. I think the items themselves, on the whole, are reasonably, imply the kind of imbalance of power and the repetition and so on. The repetition comes, of course, in saying how many times or how often is this happening. But no, there is something to be said for certainly being very clear about the definition. And I'll look up my notes to see to what extent we were successful in doing that. It's a good question.
Okay, we have to wrap up now. Questions is okay after. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, by all means, afterwards catch. I know it's rather late, and you're all wanting your lunch, don't you? But feel free, to grab hold of me and raise any questions. Because I'd love to talk to you about it.
Thank you, and thank you to all our speakers.